This week's Mind Espresso is about optimism. We know all the positive benefits of optimism. It increases your immunity to disease. In one Harvard study, they studied women over 8 years. If you are an optimist, you were 30% less likely to die in that 8-year period from cardiovascular disease. So we know it's good for immunity, it's cardiovascular health, it's good for your mental health, it helps left brain thinking, it builds resilience, and it enables better relationships. But how do you become optimistic if you're someone who hasn't been optimistic? What I'm going to do is give you a frame that we have used in working with organizations as well as personal development frames and create a path to optimism. So this is your path to optimism, and it starts with your past, rewriting your past. As you look back, no matter what your situation in life, what we want to identify is what were the highlights from your past. What were the challenges? And then from those challenges, what were those learnings? What did you do differently? And how did you become a better person because of those challenges? Now we want to distill this down into one inspiring headline for your past. What is that one inspiring headline? I'll give you my example. I make chicken salad. Right? And this actually came from my early days in my career when I have to take a bad situation and make it a good situation. Then what are 3 proof points? 3 things that I can point to that support my inspiring headline so that my brain doesn't think this is a whole bunch of stuff that I'm just making up, right? It's grounded in my past. Now codify that. That is your past history. Now that we have a past history that allows us to go forward rather than hold us back, right? We've created a story. The mind is a sense-making mechanism, right? It needs a story, and most of us hold on to stories that are not helpful. So we need a helpful story of the past. Then we need to confront reality in the present. What do we know about our situation? What is absolute fact? And distinguish that from what you think, what your opinion is, what your fears are, and what your hopes are. Now, why do we do this? Why, if we want an optimistic framework, would we choose to confront ugly, nasty reality? Well, there's a trick in the brain where if we don't uncover these, the brain still knows they're there, right? If we haven't distinguished between what we know and what we think, and we haven't confronted our fears, the brain will operate on those fears in the background. So we want to get it all out. And we want to be very honest about our reality so that we have a basis to choose a more optimistic frame for the future. Now, Sean Achor talked about the brain that operates most effectively in a positive frame. So what is your most positive frame for the future? Now, as we think about that future frame, what's your vision headline? And it could be in the business world, it could be in your personal world. What is that vision headline? That most optimistic frame, if everything went right and I gave you magical thinking, what would that vision headline be? Now, we're going to take that and we're going to make it real to our brain. Then we're going to engage in what Richard Brumelt would call guiding policies, or this, not that. What are the things that I need to do versus what are the things that I don't need to do to be able to realize that vision? So as you think about that vision in the future, then you can codify that, distill it down to really behavioral guidelines. Then, what are 3 things you can commit to that will prove that this vision is likely to happen? And you want to make your goals proximate goals. We've talked about this when we mentioned atomic habits. We want small things that build on top of each other, that build that positive momentum. You know, when they take someone to the military, they break them back down so that they can build them back up through accomplishment. What are 3 coherent actions that these interact together that when we do them will prove to ourselves that we are capable of realizing this vision and we're acting on our guiding policies? And then what is your code mode zone? Code is the thought that you have about this. Mode is what is the energy I'm going to bring to this. And zone is what am I going to focus on? So as you think about your future, what is that one mental thought that you're going to have, that you're going to focus on? What is the energy that you're going to bring, right? The emotional energy that you're going to bring. I'm going to bring enthusiasm. I'm going to bring diligent work. And then what are you going to focus on? Are you going to focus on short-term goals? Are you going to focus on what that reality looks like? And are you going to focus on what the benefits look like after you get this done? So let me wrap this back up. There are really three things to think about as you think about your positioning with regard to optimism and pessimism. What is your past? And a lot of us are beholden by a past story that doesn't help us be optimistic in our future. So the brain will let you rewrite it. It's a little known fact that the brain actually doesn't have to operate on reality because there are many realities, right? So rewrite your past, prove it to yourself. Confront the reality of the present. What do you know? What do you think? What do you fear? What do you hope? Get it out there, because once the brain sees it out there, it stops haunting you. It stops becoming a haunt from the past and becomes a driver to the future. Then what is that vision for the future? What will you do differently, this, not that? What specifically will you do? Small actions that will prove to you that you're going to realize this. And then what's your go-to? Your go-to thought, your go-to emotion, and your go-to area of focus. And if you rewrite your past, confront your present, and then you create a future frame, you will have embraced the tenets of optimism. And it's one of the leadership principles that Bob Iger calls the most important leadership principle for the future. And that is this week's Mind Espresso.